Hey everyone, welcome to God in the Marketplace podcast. I'm your host, Andy Esposito. Today we are interviewing Chuks Agada, who is the CEO and founder of Career Calibration. He basically helps mid-level to senior executives find jobs, and so I'm really excited about just getting to interview him and finding out his journey and how he got here. So I've known Chuks for a long time, and I'm super stoked that you're here. And I want to just get to your story because I want them to hear your story, and how God has led you from, all the way from Africa to where you are now. Yeah. And so I just, let's dig into that. I really want to hear start with how, when you guys as a family, when you and your family moved here, was it to Dallas?
No, so just full transparency, I was born in the United States.
Okay.
So my parents are actually from Nigeria. But they came here in the 80s and I was born. And of course, it was in Indiana is actually where they landed, Indiana.
Okay.
In Indiana.
Okay. And then, so let's start there. Cause I remember you telling me how many siblings do you have?
I have 4 other siblings.
4 other siblings. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Tell us what that was like just growing up.
So it was really interesting. So of course, like I just mentioned earlier, my parents moved here from Nigeria in the 80s.
Yeah.
And of course, I was born, and it was Bloomington, Indiana. Out of all of the places they could have gone, they went to the cornfields of Indiana. But
Bloomington, Indiana, isn't that where
Purdue University?
Yeah, and there's another. Isn't Indiana what's the guy who owns the Dallas Mavericks? What's his name?
Jerry Jones?
No, he owns the Cowboys, but the guy, he started, I think.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Cuban.
Yeah. Mark Cuban. I think he started a bar in.
Yeah. Actually, you're right. You're right. Yeah, I remember hearing his story. But yeah, so I mean, it's just, I know all the places that I guess God had basically led my father to, but he wasn't even really a strong Christian himself, but at the time. But it was a really, really interesting place to be. So we left there when I was 3. And I remember when my father, he was actually going to Purdue University getting his degree. I think it was something in education or something like that. And, one of the things for him, once he, finished his degree and he graduated, one of the things that drove us out of Indiana was, it was really interesting. I remember we were living in the dormitory. I don't know if they had a compound or whatever it was. And I don't remember this, but my mom was telling me that obviously I was a very rambunctious child, running around, noise, as a little 3-year-old, like every 3-year-old is. And I guess the neighbors didn't really like that. And I remember one time she told me that they would get death threats, that if I wouldn't shut up, that they would kill me. And
so this is bad slurs. Part of Indiana.
This is bad. I guess so. I don't know. And they would use racial slurs and say, hey, if you don't shut that baby up, we're gonna kill it. And so of course, them being from Africa are like, really, this is really gonna happen? And so so we ended up leaving, and then we ended up going somewhere else. And where we ended up after that, I think my dad just felt that, because there was a lot of other Nigerians in, I think it was Nebraska.
Yeah.
So he went out that way. We lived in Nebraska, Omaha and Lincoln, Nebraska. And of course, some of my other siblings were born there. And then we moved out of there and then moved to Iowa, lived there, and then eventually ended up in Dallas. But it was just really kind of a long, kind of an interesting journey. But it was just really interesting because my father, he wasn't really a believer or anything like that during the time. I mean, he was somewhat, I don't know, he read his Bible from time to time, but he wasn't really a strong believer. And my mom, she was a Catholic, a strong Catholic or whatnot. But, but it was just interesting just kind of living in the Midwest. And then, of course, we find ourselves now in, Cowtown in Dallas.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting. And then, of course, that's where our family, we kind of dealt with a lot of things there in Dallas, and we're still in Dallas. I mean, things are much better since then, but we went through some homelessness there, and God brought us through that, and that's an amazing story just on how God brought us through all of that. But that's a little bit of our journey.
Yeah.
Of course, I can share whatever more you want or whatever direction you want to go.
Yeah. But. So God takes everyone on different paths. Like some people, He leads through education. Some people not, for you, education was you knew in your heart that was a path for you. And, so if you don't know, Chuks is a doctor. You have your doctorates you have PhD in
organizational management.
Okay. Yeah. So when I met you, you were in Chicago getting a master's in psychology at the time, right?
Yep.
And so now I have your title here. I take it off of. So you own two companies,
yes,
right?
Sir.
And you help mid-level professionals land six-figure roles. So you have your own company, and let me make sure I get the name right here. The name of your company.
It's Career Calibration.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Career Calibration.
Yeah,
Calibration.
Calibration.
And Agada Education Solutions are your two companies, right? So talk to us a little bit about that. Like God, something that you knew education was definitely a direction that you were going to go. Did you know, like when you were going to, you were at ORU and then you were at the School of Psychology in Chicago.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, did you know what you wanted to do, or were you just kind of taking it like one step at a time?
That's a great question. It was literally one step at a time.
Okay.
It was one step at a time. I had somewhat of an idea.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the full picture. So kind of take it back. So when I was at Oral Roberts University, the Lord had called me to go there, and I knew that. And this was around, I think when I was 17 years old or whatnot, getting ready to look at different colleges. And the Lord had led me to go to Oral Roberts University. And the way that I found that out was I didn't even know Oral Roberts even existed because I was looking at schools in Texas. And I thought, because a lot of my other friends were going.
Because you were in Dallas at the time.
I was in Dallas at the time, yeah. And so I was looking at, UT Austin. I was looking at Baylor. I was looking at UNT. I was looking at a bunch of different...
Scholarship? Did you have a scholarship?
I did end up getting a scholarship, or not a full scholarship, but it was kind of like some partial scholarship to the school that I ended up going to. But that was actually for my master's degree. I'm sorry. So it wasn't for Oral Roberts University. No, I did not get a scholarship for ORU. But that door, I remember just sensing in my heart, like, okay, Lord, I just fasted and prayed and said, Lord, where do I go? And what are you calling me to, right? And I think at that time I thought maybe, I wasn't 100% sure, but I just knew that I needed to go there. And I actually enrolled. I found Oral Roberts University. I was watching a program, and I don't know if you remember Benny Hinn.
Yeah.
and of course he had Oral Roberts when he was alive. He actually had him on his program. And of course I started looking into him a lot more. And then, and of course I started praying, and I felt like, wow, this is where I'm supposed to be. And I just had that witness, how the scriptures talk about that, let peace be the umpire, and just bearing witness in your spirit. So I ended up going to Oral Roberts University, and I enrolled in as evangelism major, actually. I enrolled.
So at first you were thinking ministry.
I was thinking ministry. Exactly. Yeah. And I thought, I'm going to go, save the nations, or we're going to go just, preach the gospel. And that was the thing.
That's awesome.
And so I went, and then I felt a different direction. I started kind of just battling, like, Lord, what is this? But I started realizing, no, this wasn't going to be it. You know, that it wasn't ministry. It was going to look different. It was actually going to look different. And then even when I was there on campus, I would start getting words from people, about, hey, God's calling you in this realm. And it was actually like business. Yeah. It was actually around business. And I was like, wow. And then the Lord started giving me literally pictures, visions, almost like myself walking and sitting in, business rooms and shaking hands with business people. And of course, speaking to them about God, and of course I didn't know what that meant, but I was so excited at that time. I'm 17 years old, right? And I'm so excited at the time. I think about 18 years old at this point now. And of course I go to Oral Roberts University, and of course that first year, our family wasn't wealthy. We didn't have a lot of money at all. And that first year, we're getting ready to go into the following semester, and I was told that, hey, you need to have some money before, or you're going to get, basically kicked out because you don't have the money, the tuition to pay. And of course, I'm fasting and praying. I had friends that were with me fasting and praying, and of course, the end of the month comes at December, and nothing comes through, and I end up leaving Oral Roberts University, and I was devastated. And I thought to myself, like, Lord, I thought you called me here. Yeah. I thought you called me here. And then of course, just think about that when you're thinking about these dreams, these visions, you get in these words, you feel like, okay, maybe I missed it. Maybe others missed it. What does this mean? And anyways, here I am, supposed to be in my second semester, the following year comes through, and just battling with that, right? But of course, just kind of saying, Lord, I trust you. I know somehow I'm going to get back to ORU. I don't know how. I just know that you're calling me back to Tulsa.
Yeah.
And to finish up my degree. And of course, I end up, just fasting, praying, believing God. So one day, I think it was around the spring of 2003, I get a call from someone in admissions at Oral Roberts University.
Yeah.
And they say, hey, Chuks, we're just wanting to, talk to you about a few things. And one of the things that we want to talk to you about is actually coming back to university. We don't know where this money, it came from an anonymous donor. We don't know who it is, but there's about $8,000 credited to you to come back to university.
That's
On top
awesome.
of that, we want you to come and be a chaplain here. So that was some additional scholarship that came with that, some additional. So I was able to pay out my rest of my couple of years out there. And of course, God started opening the door, and I went back over there to, and I felt like the Lord was telling me to actually get a degree in psychology. And of course, I also did a business minor. And then even during the course of that time, the Lord started leading me towards this whole realm of psychology that's actually called industrializational psychology or business psychology. And then that started leading me into the marketplace. So it wasn't, at first I thought, okay, maybe I was going to do some traditional counseling, be a clinical psychologist of some sort, but it wasn't that. The Lord was actually leading me towards the marketplace.
Yeah.
And then now, of course, that's what led me to Chicago. And so I have a whole story. I mean, I could go on and on. And well, of course, I want to pause and give you.
You went, no, this is all good. You went from just, your parents came here from Africa. They started a family.
Yeah.
Right? In America, struggled. I mean, you guys were on the struggle bus for a long time, right?
Yes.
And can't even afford really to go to college. But somehow God makes a way.
Yeah.
So you get your major in business. Now you're in Chicago. Now you get your master's in
getting my master's in Chicago. Met you there.
Yeah, we did some street evangelism. We got a chance to do, you came with me. We did some night street evangelism.
We did.
We did that. And so, got to meet you. Your time in Chicago was awesome. And we can tell stories about that. And then you end up going to get your PhD, right?
Yep.
And where was that at?
So that was actually online. So I got it through a school called Capella University.
Okay, I'm familiar with that.
Yeah.
I've heard of them. So now, and here's something that we always knew about you. Even like all the Kyo people, like all the people from Life Changers, like we always knew at some point you were going to be successful, right? Like you just had this thing about you. And so, but what's amazing is that the way God calls people, right? Like, if you look at Gideon, when Gideon's like, God calls Gideon, he's like, God, I'm the least of my tribe, not my family, my tribe. I'm like the least of my tribe. Like, I'm not strong enough. Pick someone else, right? Everyone was like that. Jeremiah, Moses has a speech impediment. He stutters, but yet God calls him and tells him, go speak to Pharaoh, right? Like, some family from Nigeria, poor. Yeah. Now you're teaching wealthy people how to find jobs. Like, man, I just love that, and what a journey. Like, I love the fact that God likes to use people like that, because not only are you a smart, called, anointed person of God, but you're like one of the most humble people like that I know too. And I think that, I was listening to this podcast like a year ago, and this pastor was saying how they were holding these business meetings at the Playboy Mansion. And he was talking about this guy from his church that God used to go there, because he's like, man, it's funny that God used him, because what people don't know about him is that he is the most pure, like holy, humble person. Like, there's so many things that he's just oblivious to but God used him, you know what I mean? Like in this place, to go into this place. And I feel like, man, God's going to bring you before great people, and he chose you. And now you're here. Now you help people. Tell us a little bit of what it looks like that, God's using your faith to impact the marketplace. What does that look like? What is Chuks impacting the marketplace look like? Like, if we were on the outside looking in, what does that look like?
First of all, I want just appreciate the kind words, man. That means a lot. One of the things that kind of comes to my mind when you're talking about God in the marketplace, often I kind of have to pinch myself sometimes. Yeah. I'm just like, wow, this is really happening. I'm here talking to And I even sometimes even tell some of my clients, like, I shouldn't be here. Like,
Right.
God put me here.
Yeah.
And I'm talking to you, our paths have crossed. Here I am talking to some VP,
Yeah.
at a very huge or large company, or I'm talking to, some executive or someone in the C-suite.
And just so people know, right? Like, executives come to you.
Yeah.
To get, like, let's say, some executive is with some big company. He makes $500,000 a year, and maybe he lost his job or something, and the company let him go, and he needs another executive type job. You help him do all the right things to make sure that he finds another type of job. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so it could be anything, right?
Yeah.
They can come to us, they're disgruntled with their current employer. They can come to us, maybe they foresee that the company's not going to do very well, and so they need to make that move, or they get let go, because of things going on at the organization. It could be anything.
Yeah.
And so often they'll find me, whether it's through referrals or somewhere on LinkedIn. Maybe they resonate with a post I wrote or something like that, or they see something somewhere else. And and they reach out, and then I end up, we end up working with each other, and and they end up finding their roles and all of that. Like you said, it's very surreal. I mean, I'm talking with all these amazing people who are extremely competent and successful in their fields and have been so for a very long time. And here I am, Nigerian kid, born from Indiana, helping these individuals. And I often think about, kind of back to that scripture where, King David, after he had brought back the, I guess it was the ark, back to the back to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And of course they were giving all the sacrifices, and everyone was giving all those sacrifices.
Yeah.
And I think back about when King David was just like, "Who are we, Lord?
Yeah.
We were slaves back in Egypt.
Yeah.
And here we are." I mean, just the blessing of God that was on those people and the favor of God that was on them.
Yeah.
And so I think about that too often. I'm like, Lord, who am I? Like, wow, like Father, like, and so I'm just following him, and doing what he's telling me to do.
I think about David when I think about you, though. Like, he was overlooked, right? Like, all his brothers came in, and they were like, him, he's tall, he's the oldest, he's this, he's that. And he's like, no, there's got to be one. Oh, no, he's like the young kid. He's just out there watching the sheep, right? But, like, think about, like, you're this kid growing up and is struggling financially.
Yeah.
You guys were dealing with poverty. I'm sure you're watching business people thinking, wow, like some guy in a suit driving a Benz. Like, but now you're coaching those people.
I'm coaching them. Yeah, it's surreal, to be honest with you. It's surreal.
Yeah.
I mean, even today, I got a call from someone who had reached out, and he's a VP of a very large financial services firm. And he was like, Chuks, you've been on my mind for the last like 3 months, and something keeps telling me I need to come talk to you. I need to come talk to you. And so we had a brief conversation. He's like, "Hey, sign me up. Let's get to work."
Yeah.
And this guy makes probably about closer to about $400,000 or $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
And and of course he's looking to, the company that he works with right now, basically is owned by a private equity firm. So of course they're basically building up the firm to sell it. And so he knows that. And so of course he's looking to make a transition. And but I was thinking to myself, and he's not really like a believer or anything like this, but this is the interesting thing when you talk about God in the marketplace, right? Is that I will sometimes be sitting in front of these individuals who are not believers.
Yeah.
And as they go through my program, I share Jesus, I talk about God.
Yeah.
I don't hide that. I tell them, hey, this is my life. And, I would be remiss if I wouldn't tell you, like, hey, look, like the Lord brought me here. Yeah. And this is why we're talking with each other. Yeah. And I remember one of the things that I say in my program, I say, I'm not a religious person, but I have a relationship with Jesus.
Amen.
And one time that caught the ear, the attention of he was a vice president of marketing for a very large firm. I mean, if I want to say the name of the company, you'd immediately know who it was. But for confidentiality reasons, I won't bring it up. But anyways, he had said, hey, Chuks, before we jump off the phone, he goes, there's something you told me something I heard you say in this program, that you're not a religious person, but you have a relationship with Jesus. Can we talk about that? Because I'm wondering, how does that work? Yeah. And he's not a believer. Yeah. But he says that, he's grown up around believers. He's had, he has seen some things where, some just hypocritical stuff, with believers. And so that has turned him off. And here was a perfect segue to get right into it and to show him the love of Jesus, to talk to him about, hey, this is I shouldn't be talking to you right now.
Man,
it's awesome.
And that's why this is needed. That's why God in the Marketplace is needed, because people are like, and I'm not saying that every church model is broken, but there's a lot of broken models out there. There's a lot of churches out there that are hurting more people than, and then, the Bible says that when the shepherd is gone, the sheep scatter, right?
Yep.
Like, look at how many pastors are getting caught up in stuff.
Oh, yes.
And those people are like, it's just, it's tough out there. But this is why we need to be out there, man. There's people who will never step into a church, especially this generation that's coming up, these 20-year-olds. Dude, they find community in different ways. And so, like, they don't feel the need to go to church, and then their mom was uber religious and did things that put restrictions on them that even Jesus wouldn't hold them to, and they're burned out, but they see someone who's living it. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes our actions can speak louder than our words.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally.
Is there a time that you can remember that was just like you saw the hand of God move in your business? Like, maybe it was an opportunity to pray with someone, or, like something, God gave you a word of wisdom or word of knowledge about something or situation, and you shared it with someone and something happened. Like, do you have any of those that you can share?
Oh yeah. So the interesting thing is that I run this business with my wife, Virginia, and so she does she does it part-time because she works, she's on staff with the Gateway Church full-time. But but anyways, there was a time, I remember this vividly, and actually it was really interesting because my wife and we jumped on a coaching call with one of our clients, and she was an executive, and she was looking for a new opportunity. And so we're just going through kind of our normal process of like, walking people through and helping them find work.
Yeah.
And then there was a point where we started really getting really deep about kind of some of the core issues. 'Cause sometimes when it comes to people's careers and things like that, or maybe they're struggling to find work, sometimes it's a lot deeper than hey, I just need to find a job. Sometimes God's maybe trying to arrest them and really get their attention.
Yeah.
And there was a time I recall when we were talking with this client of ours that the Lord really gave my wife actually kind of almost like a word. And she has this ability where she can, she can just read people sometimes, and it's just like, just right in their hearts. And so here's this VP. She's, been in her industry, in her role she's a healthcare executive, actually, been in her role for, 25 years or so. And I remember probably wouldn't step foot in the church.
Yeah.
Know nothing about God. And then my wife just really begins to pretty much read her mail. And what I mean by that is start to call things out as we start. And we were both ministering together, and it was very powerful. And we started just sensing like God wanted to truly minister to her. Yeah. And as we were talking to her, here she was crying.
Yeah.
She's not met, she's this tough, healthcare executive, breaking down.
Yeah.
And it was just really like, wow, to really see that, and to just see that she was being ministered to in a way that she probably would have never gotten anywhere. Yeah. She wouldn't step foot in the church. She probably wouldn't talk to any of the Christians or anything like that. But, executives need God too.
Yeah, they do. And I think that executives are, they think different, and they're constantly moving. They're up early. There's a lot on their plate. Yeah. And so a lot of that stuff they cram. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, totally. It's almost like, hey, I don't got time to have emotions right now. Yeah. I got a company to run. I have major responsibilities, right? Like, I know I have a friend of mine who ended up marrying one of Bill Johnson's spiritual daughters, right? And while she was finishing up school, she was a nanny for this family where the husband and wife were both executives at Ford. This is in Michigan. Mm-hmm. So they were both were high up, corporate office for Ford. Mm-hmm. And she was just sharing some stories about, how God was using her with the kids, because the parents are just like, they're so constantly on the move. Everything is scheduled, even time with their kids, because otherwise they're just so busy. And how God was like really using her, because they weren't believers, but God was using her to speak into the kids' lives and pray with the kids and teach them about Jesus, because the parents definitely weren't. And then they also didn't have time to. Mm-hmm. And so, man, that's awesome that, God is strategically using you to, because sometimes those people are a little harder to get to, because, you look at, there's a reason why the gospel came for the poor. It was like the poor are poor because of a mindset, right? Mm-hmm. So when you do have a stronger mindset and you have money, your need for God isn't there unless something major happens to you, right? Unless it's like a sickness or something, so man, that is awesome. I have I have two more questions for you, but is there any other ones that you want to share that come to mind?
Yeah, there's another one that I think of was actually that executive that I was telling you about, talking to you about earlier, that marketing executive. He was another individual again who wouldn't. I mean, he's cussing up like a sailor. I mean, he wouldn't walk into a church. Right?
Yeah.
But for him to stop and say, "Hey, I really want to know a little bit more about that."
Yeah.
And I recall that, one of the things that I realized too was like, wow, even as I'm doing this, we have to set a light. We have to set an example, right?
Yeah.
And, so if things are maybe even going hard for me in business, I have to still walk this thing out, because there are people who are watching, wondering, is he real?
Yeah.
Is this for real?
Yeah.
And so I realized that too. And it's been awesome, man. I can't tell you. Like I said, sometimes I have to pinch myself, like, man, this is really happening.
Yeah.
And I know that I feel 100% that I'm smack dab in God's calling. Like I'm doing exactly what He's telling me to do.
Yeah.
And that's a great feeling.
It is. I always say in my on my shows is that there's no greater joy than to be used by God.
Oh man.
And a lot of times, like if you look at the prophet in the Old Testament, he spoke to the king and the priest.
Yeah.
Right? Like he had the voice in the political realm, the marketplace, whatever you want to call it, because when you're speaking to the king, you're speaking with the entire, right? Yeah. Or that he can also speak to the priest, which is in the church realm. He had that kind of authority. And so, and it's almost like we have to, like my prayer a lot of times is, God, help me to be aware, help me to be sensitive to that. Like that when you're moving, I'm sensitive to that.
Yes.
Because those word of knowledge and word of wisdom and prophecy, they come so quick. If you're paying attention, like if you're engaged and disconnected, but if you're like, God, what do you want me to say or do? Is there anything you want me to say right now? Man, He will download so much, and so the fact that you are out there dealing with high-level executives, one question I have for you is there a kingdom principle that you can think of? A kingdom principle that is like a staple in your life, business, ministry? Is there like just something that like God has put in you from the beginning, like this is a staple in my life, in my ministry, in my business?
Oh man.
Is there anything? I know some people have a lot of them, some people have like one, they know for sure one. Like is there anything that comes to mind?
Matthew 6, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and His righteousness, and all of these other things will be added unto you.
Amen.
Matthew 6, I mean, that is the staple for life, business.
Keeps you grounded.
Yeah. And so seeking the kingdom, and the kingdom, when you think about seeking the kingdom, and I was even meditating on this actually a couple weeks ago, when you're seeking the kingdom, it's not just about, you get up at a certain time and you read your Bible and you pray. Yeah. It's really your whole heart and mind and your talents and your gifts and finances, everything is geared towards the kingdom. Focused towards the kingdom. And one of my biggest prayers is like, Lord, let my entire life be just about your kingdom. About your kingdom. Awesome. Because once that happens, everything else, right, just falls into place. Everything else. And one of the things that, of course, I go to an amazing church in Dallas, Gateway Church, and Robert Morris, yeah. And one of the some of the things I you see, there's believers all over the place there, and one of the things that I've been able to witness is I've seen some people who, wow, like when they give their lives completely over to God, man, they have no lack. And then they're even better off. Like, you know what I mean? Like, as opposed to like working and kind of going back to that story, talking about executives and they're so busy. Actually, I even think about a particular couple right now who were actually both high-level executives. It was a husband and wife, a couple who, they came to the Lord. They started going to Gateway. Now their whole entire hearts are just given to basically the church and loving God. And they have since quit their roles and their jobs there, but God is taking care of them better.
Yeah.
Since they're just focusing on God. They're focusing on the things of the Lord, and God has really taken care of them. But I mean, they're multimillionaires.
Yeah.
And God is taking care of them better now than them going out into the marketplace working and going crazy, because they're focused on the kingdom. But I think about that principle: seek ye first the kingdom of God and its righteousness, and all of these things will be added unto you.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of my faves too.
Yeah.
Okay. So last question: if there was one book that you can recommend, or one book you could take with you, if you were like, hey, God's telling you you're going to go, you're moving and you can only take one book with you. Oh, man. Aside from the Bible.
I know, right?
What's that book? Is there any book that comes to mind that helps you, and it doesn't even have to, I mean, it doesn't have to be God-centered, but if it helps you, in a way to where you, it motivates you, it stirs you up to kind of just be, God conscious, or your purpose-minded on what you're doing and why you do it every day. What would that be?
Does it have to be a scripturally centered book, or does it can be anything?
It can be anything, man. There's a book that I've read called the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Have you ever read that book?
I've heard of it. No.
So that book it's a fictional business book, right? And man, I don't know what it is, but the parallels, when I read that book, I think of like ministry, and it's not ministry minded at all. But I have some books like, Thou Shalt Prosper, which is like, have you ever read that book? Yeah. So there's I have some books out there, but if there, it doesn't have to be, but if there's something that kind of stands out.
Okay. Yeah. So one book that stands out to me that was an awesome game changer, and my wife and I, we both actually had read it. It's a book by an old time guy. You may have heard of his name. His name is Earl Nightingale.
Oh yeah.
And the name of the book is called
Motivational Speaker. Yeah. Coach. Yeah.
The name of the book is called The Secret Advantage. An amazing book. And he was a believer.
He was a believer. Yeah.
He was a believer.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the nuggets from that thing.
I'm going to have to grab it now.
Goodness. I mean, that thing has been a game changer for us.
Say the name again.
It's called The Secret Advantage. And so he goes into a lot of different things. And one of the premises of that book is, as a man thinks in his heart, so is he.
Oh, okay. So kind of like Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah. And that's actually one of his mentors was Napoleon Hill.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a powerful book.
That's awesome.
That book gets me like, I was listening to it on the way.
Yeah. Oh, see, it's an audiobook too.
Yeah, it's an audiobook, or
okay.
You can get
The Secret Advantage.
Yeah, called The Secret Advantage. Great book.
I used to listen to his motivational stuff way back when.
Yeah.
So that's awesome, man. Well, man, thank you for being a part of the show. I want to let you guys know too, Chuks, how can, if someone's listening, right, and they're like, we can really use Chuks' services, do you let's say there's someone out there who, they might not be an executive, but let's say they've been a part of this company for a long time, and they're not being recognized, but they want to take that next step. Maybe being an executive is the next step. They can reach out to you, right?
Yeah.
Where can they go? Do you have a website, LinkedIn? Where do you recommend people find you?
Yep, absolutely. So they can reach out to me directly via email. Okay. And so that is cagada@careercalibration.co or .co. Also, we do have a website. It's called Career Calibration, and so www.careercalibration.co. And yes, I mean, we help individuals, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm always on LinkedIn. Please connect with me on LinkedIn. So you can find me there, and I'd be more than happy to help you. We also, we just don't also focus on executives. So we do mid-level to executives.
Okay.
And so those are the types of professionals that we help. So yes, if you are a person who's looking to go also to another level in your career, more than happy to help you.
Yeah.
If you're looking for some believers, we love Jesus.
Yeah.
We love Jesus. So 100%.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, man, thanks for the show, and stay tuned for our next episode.